Don't stand in front of that when you talk about it.
I won't. Thank you so much for coming today, Michael. I really appreciate it. We're going to talk about conflict and how conflict affects our personal relationships as well as our work relationships. A lot of times what we do is we do a lot of reading about how we need to be open in our resolution of conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then we don't have the tools to do it, do we? So what we're going to do today is talk about what is conflict, the nature of conflict, where it comes from, and give us some actual techniques to kind of solve the problems that we're facing in an open way, as open as we can be. Okay? All right, what we're going to talk about is ways conflict may appear, model of conflict styles. We're going to look at what styles to use and when. We're going to look at how culture impacts conflict. And we're going to look at steps to work with conflict.
Okay.
What questions do you have?
None so far.
Okay, thank you. Please take a minute and reflect on some conflict in your personal or professional life. And write that conflict down so we can use that. Okay. Would you mind sharing what you wrote?
Yes. One of the conflicts that I encounter professionally is having a strong opinion that opposes my coworker's strong opinion. And how to resolve that, how to work through it.
So strong opinions that clash?
Yes, clash, that's a good word.
Okay, any other conflicts you have?
Big one, how dealing with a know-it-all. Somebody who knows everything, or at least believes they do, and won't listen to someone else's opinion or solution.
So they also will not listen. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's look at how your conflict actually matches some of the ways conflict may appear. So first of all, when we're looking at conflict, is it an expressed struggle? So in each of these instances, it's possible that this other person is not aware that their strong opinion is causing conflict with others. Now, I don't know enough about the situation, but that's what we're talking about here, is that with true conflict, you and I both need to agree that there's a disagreement. So if I'm busy being frustrated with your strong opinion that I've never expressed to you about that I have, then there's not true conflict. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. The next piece is perceived. Do we have a perception of incompatible goals, or do we have a perception of scarce resources? So let's look at our conflict. Scarce resources, it's possible that opinions or someone who believes it all could show up as a perceived incompatible goals. If we're believing that, and I don't know enough about the situation, but if I believe that my opinion is going to reach this goal and you believe this opinion is going to reach this goal, that might be a misperception. May not fit, might fit, okay? Moving on, interdependence. A lot of times with conflict, we forget that we're interdependent in our relationships at work. We need each other. I need your viewpoints, you need my viewpoints. I need you to work on my team, I need to work on your team. So a lot of times conflict just occurs because we forget we're interdependent. The next piece is an actual interference, and that's when someone stops you from doing what you need to do. They actually put a block in your way and you cannot achieve it, and that's an actual interference for conflict. So this is ways that conflicts may appear. Where do you think these fall with this? Do you think it's a struggle, a perception of goals or resources, interdependence?
Well, based on what you said about express struggle, if I don't express that I'm frustrated with the person who has a strong opinion, or the person who believes they know everything and they won't listen to my opinion, then it sounds like I don't have a struggle.
In their mind, they
don't see it that way.
They don't see it that way. Okay, great. Let's move on and talk about the models of styles of conflict. Continue to reflect on your conflict and think about ways you have tried or not tried to solve it. As you're reflecting, I'm going to talk about this model. You can have a high concern for self or a low concern for self. You can have a low concern for others or a high concern for others in your conflict style. How does this look like on our model? You can have competing, win-win, it needs to be my way, high concern for myself. You could have avoiding, lose-lose, no way, no concern for others, no concern for self. Okay? You could have accommodating, your way, high concern for others, low concern for self. You could have a compromising, which is a partial lose-lose, halfway, and notice it's in the middle of all four, so it may include all four.
Oh, okay.
So I could probably even open the square because you're taking in from all four. Here you're collaborating, win-win, our way. So think about your conflict. Which one of you use the most, or if any?
Right now, I see that I'm accommodating. I will lose my side of it and allow the other person to win, get their way.
Okay. That might be appropriate in your situation, and we'll move into that and talk about what style to use and when. It's possible that you move from each square at different stages, and that takes us to what style to use and when. Because conflict's not always easy. It's not a linear process. What we have to look at when we decide what style to use, we need to know who's involved in the relationship. I might need to accommodate, have it your way if you're superior. Okay? The situation might be work. It might require a little more accommodation. Okay? The other person, if it's a personal conflict or an interpersonal conflict unrelated to work, they may be unwilling to budge. What can you do? You may try a whole bunch of things. It still may put you here. You may try to be compromising, try to be collaborating, but these situations are going to impact it. Could also be the goals. What's my goal here? Is it really not that important to address this conflict? Oh. So it's really not about, and a lot of times you'll see in sales training, win-win, my way, win-lose, but we may move from square and then be in the middle, compromising. Does that help? I see by the look on your face it's helping.
Yes.
Okay.
It is. Is it a conscious thought that, considering the situation, what do I want here? What's my goal? Or depending on, I guess, I don't know, personality or whether you feel you're winning or losing the discussion, do you unconsciously move from one area to the other?
I think it's both. I think you can unconsciously move, and I think you can become conscious, especially if you're professional and we're dealing with conflict at work.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, let's move forward. Culture and conflict. What does that mean? We've talked about before dimensions of culture, very complicated. A lot of times we think of culture as just ethnic diversity or racial diversity, which can show up in these cultural components, individualistic, collectivist cultures. But also we've talked about through the course that we have demographic diversity, which is my religion, my socioeconomic status, my occupation, my geographic origin. All of these factors are going to influence me and how I solve conflict, along with my cultural components, and then my individual. We all know that some individuals address conflict head-on. Some individuals want to shy away from conflict. That may just be a personality trait, how that person thinks. So that's also this factor. What style do I use? Is the person unwilling to budge, or am I dealing with a personality style that doesn't want to deal with conflict?
Oh, okay.
So all of these factors will influence us as we work with our conflict and help us understand. I see you thinking.
Yes, I hadn't considered all of those things before, and how it applies to me and how it might be applying to the other person.
It's very important to think about these factors. Gender. age. You know, how a 5-year-old solves conflict is going to be a lot different than a 55-year-old. And of course, those are extremes. But you could take a 22-year-old versus a 44-year-old. There's going to be some differences there in how you solve conflict. Your occupation. Am I a manager? Am I an officer? What's my role? That's going to impact how you solve conflict. Right?
Makes sense.
Okay, let's move on. Active steps that you can take. So I want you to think again about that conflict. I'm going to give you some steps here. First of all, you've done the first step. Identify the unmet need. Identify the problem. That's what you need to do in yourself. A lot of times we walk away and we're frustrated. So what happened? We have to ask ourselves, what am I actually upset about? What is the conflict here? Once we get that straight, we can move to making a date with the person. Is it safe? Is it appropriate? I don't know the power position you have with this person, so you'll need to decide if you really want to have that kind of open conversation. And also the situation could be, is it a safe and trusting environment to do so?
Okay.
And if it's not a safe and trusting environment, then you may be making a conscious decision if your common goal is to stay successful at work, to be more accommodating. But now you're conscious of that decision. And instead of the conflict eating at you, I'm going to let this go. I don't know. Okay? If you do make a date, you want to describe the problem with the other person. I notice, I feel, I hear, I observe. I statements. Okay? You also want to consider the point of view of the other person. Why do I sense such strong opinions? So you may want to ask a why question, and this is important with your tone. If you say, why do you have strong opinions? It's going to set them on defense, versus if you say, I'm wondering why you have strong opinions, in an honest way. So you have to set tone and safety here, but you're trying to find out where they're coming from. Okay, that's going to help you understand them. Then you've got to negotiate. This right here, the negotiation, may take you all over this map.
Okay.
Is it a win-win now? Is it a win-lose? When? How? Does it move? It may
Okay.
not be all the time one way. Okay, we've got to negotiate. Then we've got to follow up. Did it work?
Oh.
Yeah, let's follow up. Did this discussion work? So, what we've talked about today are the ways the conflict may appear, the model of conflict styles, looking at what style to use, culture in conflict, and the process to work through, which are these steps. What questions do you have?
For instance, in the steps that you can take, can they be independent, or is there, should you try ideally to keep them in that type of order?
I think life is a system, and I don't think we can think linearly. And when you're at work, you need to make it work. And so if you may have to take it out of order, I believe. But again, this is where you need to look at the situation, the context.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
That makes sense.
So yeah, I may not do this negotiation right away. I may not even set a formal date. Setting a date might look like, hey, I was wondering if I could take 5 minutes of your time. That's setting a date.
Oh.
Do you have 5 minutes to talk
Simple
right now?
as that.
Yes or no? Don't have 5 minutes? Okay, great, I'll catch you later. Because work is happening fast.
Yes. Then can you suggest what would happen if you take the